Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining the International Museum of Dinnerware Design. I'm Margaret Carney. This evening, we've got Beth Lo speaking. Beth Lo not only works in clay, but she's also illustrated this book, which is fabulous. We sell it in the gift shop, Annie Yang's Great Soybean Picnic. And it's written by her sister, Ginny, and I'm going to open it here. Not that you can see this, but anyway. So her plates are the illustrations in the Great Soybean Picnic children's book. I know if you're here tonight, and I do thank you very much for joining, because I know there's lots of things for you to do, and we're glad you're here because I'm excited about Beth's talk, and we know you are too. So the talk is half-half, a Chinese American life expressed through ceramic art. And I think you've all read the introduction to Beth, and you know what an internationally acclaimed artist she is. And I know she's a fun speaker. And I'm going to turn it right over to you, Beth, and let you share your screen or make any introductory comments you want.
Okay, well, thanks to Margaret and Bill for putting this together, and thanks to you all for joining. This is sort of weird because I can't get any reactions from you guys. So I hope you will laugh at my jokes on your own. And go ahead and type in the questions that you might have for me. I've got basically my PowerPoint, which covers a lot of work. So I will try to go through it quickly. When you get to be my age, you have a lot of things that you've tried and things have developed along the way. And it's sort of like wanting to show off your grandchildren. You can't sort of leave a couple of them out. So I'm going to start with some pretty early work and try to describe how my personal life and my personal investigations into identity have affected my work, and how that investigation has helped me grow my work. And then hopefully that work can sort of turn around and also affect my environment. So, okay, with that, I will try to make this technological situation work. Thank you. So here goes. Like I said, I have a lot of slides because I've been making work for such a long time that I've tried lots of approaches, and all of them kind of has sprung from what I'm thinking about my personal life, and all these different series. I'm going to just kind of show a variety of work, how they've evolved, how one body of work has evolved from another or from an event in my life. I live in Montana right now. I moved there after being raised in the Midwest. I'm the second daughter of an immigrant family, so my parents came to the United States during World War II, and my dad was a professor of aeronautical engineering at Purdue University. He was part of a group of scholars that came to the United States in the 40s and 50s. And they really wanted me to grow up American. They spoke some Chinese in the household, but they mostly spoke English because they wanted me to fit in. So after living in the Midwest for a long time, I looked for grad schools in the art world, and I found Montana, University of Montana, studied with Rudy Audio, moved to Montana and never wanted to leave, partly because of the landscape, which is amazing, but even maybe more so because the population is kind of small. So there was a great sense of freedom in terms of what I wanted to do with my artwork. So when I was doing undergraduate work, I was doing kind of very typical Japanese-inspired work, interested in glazes and high fire and temoku and all that classic wabi-sabi aesthetic. But when I discovered porcelain, I felt like that was one of the first little nods to me that I was interested in an Asian aesthetic. Um, in grad school, you learn to think a little bit more about ideas behind your work. So I tried a whole bunch of different things, and I'm not going to show you my grad work, but after grad school, I wanted to stay in Montana. And so I decided to try to open a studio in a small rural town and just try to figure out what it was that I had to say about my work and myself or with my work. And I started making these sort of Art Deco form vases. And I ended up making this one, which was sort of a breakthrough piece. And I think, I'm sure there's lots of students out there. I hope there's some students or young artists out there. And you find that there's these little points in your life where something feels different and you're making a new step. And this piece was that for me because the image on it, which before this I was making pretty much design type of work, but the image on this started to turn into a face, and it started to turn into a Chinese face. And when I looked at this, after I made it, I thought, this is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, but also familiar and right. And it forecasts sort of my interest in not only Asian aesthetics, but also Asian stereotypes. So you got the slanty eye in there, which is part of that aesthetic. After grad school, I lived in rural Montana for a long time, just kind of playing around, what am I doing? And then I got pregnant, and when I was pregnant, I just did not want to work in clay. It was like, oh, too messy, too much dirt, too much cleanup. My fat stomach is in front of the wheel. I'm not comfortable. So I started doing a lot of drawing. And lo and behold, I started drawing babies. I had gotten a 1-year appointment teaching ceramics at the University of Montana in 1985, and I had enough of clay at school, and I worked on drawings after school at the kitchen table. And this piece in particular foreshadowed some things that I was doing. So the baby face, the hands, the origami boats around it, and a fairly large head. And I wanted to capture the feeling of the Tiananmen Square Mao. And, just like, this is all I can think about is babyhood. After Ty was born, I started making what I would call the Good Children series, which is pretty much the direction that my work has gone ever since. So from going from sort of non-objective decoration to thinking about my Asian background. I was when I was growing up, there was a lot of these magazines from China, these communist China Reconstructs were the magazines, or the Chinese posters, which show these good children who are ridiculously good. They're all kind of spaced out looking, but you can tell that they are supposed to model a type of child that does all good works, helps the party, helps the Communist Party, super healthy and happy and smart and positive. And these crazily overly good children started to influence my own images that I was drawing. So because of that drawing in the kitchen, on the kitchen table experience, I realized that I wanted to draw directly on ceramics. I'd always drawn as a kid, and it just seemed like the natural kind of thing to do. So I started doing these platters with these good children on them, and they, in general, are sort of precocious or good beyond their their age. So you have these chemists and scientists. The periodic table is in the back. I did lots of these good children platters doing sort of things that were above their age level. And one little offshoot of that is the idea of work and play. And what I started thinking in terms of when you want to raise the child that you think would be helpful to the world or have a good life, you think about when somebody's work is also their play. That's sort of when art happens or creativity happens and you have satisfaction in your work. So I have two people, one of whom is saying what they're doing is work and the other person is playing. Same with this. You've got the girl saying work and you have the boy saying play. So maybe cooking and providing desserts for this little soiree is could be both work and play depending on your attitude. So these good children just started to infiltrate all of my work. So this is just some examples of how they just started appearing on functional work. So on the upper left is a collaboration with Steve Lee of the Archie Bray Foundation. We've done a bunch of collaborations and that's been fun. In the middle, I have sort of this, I call them think, don't think cups of children sort of in a Zen state, maybe. On the right, I call these wabi slabby cups. And those are cups of the only technical invention I've ever made. Usually my techniques are very rudimentary, ceramics one, I would say, but I did sort of invent how to make a slab cup with what I would consider having a lot of movement and wabi slabby. So they're called wabi slabby. Lower left is a china plate. I'll talk about that later, but it's very much like the picnic plates that are in the show. Lower right is a Year of the Tiger plate. Swimmer cups. I've made these for over 10 years. They're really popular. I am a swimmer, not a good swimmer, but one of the things about moving to Montana is I discovered swimming in natural water. And I can tolerate pretty cold, ice cold mountain streams. And if there's a pool there, I'm in it. So these swimmers are, I love the sensation of floating that I can capture with those cups. And I'll talk a little bit more about water later also. The idea of children also extends to the idea of brothers and sisters and family. And these are cups of, I always think of these as little kids in their pajamas lining up against the wall to compare their heights, where they make little marks on the wall for how they've grown. On the insides of the cups are the words for little brother, little sister, older brother. Another manifestation of family. So this is recent. This is like last year, where some of those other pieces are quite old. So it's more about grouping things in terms of series rather than completely chronological. But I did make my own mold for a spoon and made this family spoon rack where you can see it says mother in red on the wooden rack, mother, father, older sister, etc. So these ideal children, these good children, I was just doing these two-dimensionally, drawing them. And another just sort of classic art thing is like, oh, I could make these 3D. And that feels like a bold move. But you just, I mean, I guess again, for students or for people early on, like go for it. And I didn't think I could sculpt that well, but you just try and you learn how. So the good children started appearing three-dimensionally as well. And again, referring back to the Maoist era in China, I did go to China. I've been to China 6 times. And on one of our trips, we went to Taisan, which is one of their holy mountains, and they have these giant calligraphy characters written on the rocks. And this just sort of made me create these, again, socialist, realist, good children with their little red scarves, you know, uh, proudly standing on these mountains. The characters say boy and girl, and I've done a lot with pairing, which is sort of a Chinese aesthetic. So a couple other versions. Again, there are lots of versions of these boy and girl pieces. I kind of like the stairway. It just gives me a little sense of climbing up onto this perch. This one is very recent. This is a version that involves slip cast pieces of bamboo. And one of the things that I started becoming interested in are other aspects of Chinese culture that seem to be emblematic or important. And bamboo is one of the it's ridiculously ubiquitous in Chinese culture. Bamboo is used for everything from you eat the bamboo shoots, and you can make beautiful aesthetic objects like bamboo fans or bamboo brush holders. Then bamboo is a grass. It grows really fast. And I don't know if you've ever seen the bamboo scaffolding in Asia, but they will, instead of using steel scaffolding, they will scaffold the entire outside surface of a skyscraper and climb up on that bamboo scaffolding and work on their very, very tall buildings. Bamboo is also being used by a friend of mine who is trying to make a biochar reactor that can be in a person's home so that you could burn your bamboo and make little bamboo pellets that you can use for cooking. And bamboo grows so fast and is so ubiquitous in Asia that it's actually carbon positive to use this biochar. Bamboo is also in so much Chinese literature and poetry. Bamboo is strong, but it bends with the wind and the water. It is hollow, so it has an emptiness in the center. So it these are the kinds of things that I think about when I decide to choose an emblem to work with in my own artwork, something that has a lot of resonance and a lot of associations. So this piece also relating to family, the words say jiating, which is translated as family. This is slip cast bamboo from my sister's garden in Eugene, Oregon. Bamboo grows in many places in the United States that you wouldn't expect, and it grows in Oregon. And then written on the bamboo in my own terrible calligraphy are quotations from that I learned when I was a child, like how to be good, like eat all your food, don't hit people, clean, brush your teeth, those kinds of sayings. Another aspect that is sort of both personal and cultural is origami and also mahjong. I'll talk about mahjong some more later, but this is just a piece that explores some of those images and cultural references. And here's a more recent piece. This is last year, just using the origami boats. And it says 回家, which means go home or return home. And I think about a little bit about the immigrant situation and when do you decide to return home? What is your home? When my father died, I did a whole series of sheetrock pieces. This was probably some of my best exploration in drawing because it was big. And so I would get a full-size piece of sheetrock, 4x8. For at that time, you could get it for about $3 or $4 a sheet. And a lot of, I would work these sheetrock pieces in a way that's very clay-like. So I would take water and scrub away the top surface of cardboard and get down to the brown cardboard underneath, and then also nail into it or add pieces like the origami birds or nails. And the aesthetics really come from things like how important the hand is in terms of Buddhist mudras, and also the words for different members of the family, father, mother, sister, brother, the fingerprint on the right referring to identity, and the little red splotch on the left referring to the Chinese chops that are on Chinese painting. So I made a bunch of these, but I'm just gonna leave that for now and talk a little bit about celadon, which is more in the ceramic field. I did spend a short summer workshop in Jingdezhen in China, where I was amazed at the the way they do things over there, the distribution of labor. There'd be glazers, there'd be painters, there'd be throwers, there'd be trimmers, there'd be kiln lowers, there'd be transporters. And you could go to the glaze shop and buy 20 different kinds of celadon. And it was such a rich environment to think about how to use that celadon to create sort of a jade-like quality. And I took a class in carving, and I said, I know how to carve with celadon, but this woman showed me how to, she calls it double carving. So it's carving on the inside and the outside of your line. And so your line shows up kind of as the white instead of the dark. So on the left, it's bad children, broken vase, pulling the cat's tail, running with scissors, drinking booze. And on the right, I have a piece that reflects my neurotic obsession with the fortune-telling and philosophical treatise called the I Ching, which is an ancient text that offers both telling the future and also giving you good advice for whatever it tells you the future may hold. So each of these is, again, going back to the idea of swimmer. Water can be both healing and life-giving, but it can also be dangerous and threatening. So there was a little while where I needed to throw the I Ching to make every decision in my life. And I started getting this same one over and over again, and it was the water hexagram. So a hexagram is consisted of broken lines and straight lines. So the figure on the right has two figures broken. The string of the boys is a solid line. So it's broken line, solid line, broken, broken, solid, broken. And that is the hexagram for Khan, the water. It's also called the abysmal. So it was kind of a downer hexagram to get. It's like, oh no, I got the abysmal again. And pretty soon I started getting the one which said, don't keep asking the oracle multiple times. But I like the I Ching because not only does it tell you about danger, it also tells you how to flow and how to get over it and how to move through and what the positives are of water. But I did think of water as I started thinking of water and using the image of water a little bit as a sense of being overwhelmed by water, by a flood. So we have a series of pieces involving basins. And this piece in particular, I call Flood, and it has several buckets that are placed randomly around the floor as if there's a leak in the ceiling and you have to capture where the drips are. But inside each bucket is a child trapped with the water coming up to his chin. So the celadon represents the water line. And I made this piece in conjunction with the theme of how to raise a good child. And it was kind of at a time when my son was going through some difficult period in his life, which all of our kids do. And I wanted to capture that sense of entrapment and frustration in this piece. And then after I made this piece, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to make work about my son because, well, what do you know? He grew up and he's doing fine. He's 38 now. And I started realizing that the work that I was making is really more about me, just as that very early cone-shaped vase was kind of a self-portrait. And I do think in a lot of ways, a lot of our art is self-portraiture in some way or another. So I can't ask the audience, but if you can think about if you can guess which one's me, and then I will tell you that I am the one, the littlest one in the dark coat. So that's my mother and my mom. That's Auntie Yang on the other adult there, and my sister and my cousins. So as I started thinking about identity more than raising a good person, one of the pieces I made is just called Me, You, USA, China. And you can see that these two characters are standing on terracotta bases, and look from above, you can see that they outline the map of the United States and the map of China. Along with realizing that the work was not about me so much. I mean, it was not about my son so much as it was about children in general, as well as me. I started thinking a lot about why do I still keep making these little kids on my work? And I think a lot of it is because I wanted to use the aspects of the child to evoke a certain mood. So what I think that I clung to or started thinking analytically about what is it about the use of the image of child. And I think it is some of these words are very evocative. Memory, innocence, vulnerability, potential, that's sort of the good children thing, and play. So those are the things that I sort of want to evoke with my work. So I started using the image of the child in lots of different ways. And one of the different ways that I wanted to talk about my own self, maybe in childlike form, is through the use of figurines. So I do like to go to the antique store and the thrift store as well. And I have a pretty good collection of racist Chinese ceramic figurines. And there's just that tradition of these goofy little figurines. And so I started thinking, and also, oh, sorry, back up. Another thing is cartoons, which is another important influence for me. So Little Lulu was my favorite cartoon as a girl, partly because she was a very good girl hero. She would outsmart the boys a lot of times, and she was a storyteller, and she was always kind of good in the long run. She had her naughty side, but she was always like good to her parents and good to Alvin. Anyway, the speech bubble is something that I used a lot because it's such a wonderful way of creating content in your work. So one of the things I started thinking about, again, using the child as an image is, and the speech bubbles, is what are the earmarks of being an Asian? So there is a website, or there used to be a website called All Look Same, where it would flash pictures of various Asians, and you would have to try to choose if they were Japanese or Korean or Chinese or from Indonesia, and they would score you. So these are 4 slipcast figurines that say same in 4 different languages. So this piece is called All Look Same. By the way, my own score was less than 25% correct. So I was worse than random. Again, using these little kids, again, images, potential, possibly good children, cuteness. I use them to use text. So that the little boy in the red scarf and the Chinese socialist outfit, his text says China. Then it's sort of a blank slate, but the red scarf persists as a cowboy scarf in America. This piece, it just says more, 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 even more, too much. And this piece to me was about overpopulation or the Chinese hordes. So take a little detour, and thanks for your patience. I'm going to try to go a little faster here. So I mentioned that I've been to China about 5 or 6 times, and my mother's family is quite amazing. They're just wonderful, kind people. And we started going there. My mom went back for the first time in the 70s, and I went for the first time in the 90s. And even in the 90s, most of them were wearing Mao jackets and lived in concrete Soviet bloc type buildings, single light bulbs, rooms with many people, yet they still gave us things rather than us giving them things. They wanted to give what they had. So my mom has lots of brothers and sisters, and we would treat them to a big banquet, and before we could eat, we had to take 10 million photos. So this is a photo from before we ate, and it's the combinations of what the photos would be taken of. You'd have to take everybody the year of the cow. You'd have to take the Americans with the older generation, the Americans with the younger generation, the older generation, or people with the same last name or different parts of the family. But many, many photos. The Chinese like to pose. So I started making a family album series. So starting to think about the family in a larger context. And so this is one of the things that we did in 1995 is we looked at photo albums over and over and over again. So I decided to make these sort of nostalgic images from photos. This one is a little bit more recent. This is about my mom and my mom's sister and 3 of her friends trying to get to the United States in 1945 during the war, and they had to spend several months in Bombay waiting for a Swedish Mercy ship to take them to the United States. So they would go down to the beach every day to see if there was a ship that could take them. So thinking about this extended family, a lot of what I was doing work about was the kinds of stories in everyone's family that become mythic. And I wanted this to feel like a roadside memorial. So with the bas-relief and the carving of the date 1945 on the side. This piece is another one from that series, and I call it the wedding portrait. And this was from a photo of my cousins who were married during the Cultural Revolution. And there was no religious ceremony allowed. Everything was banned. in communist China. And so their wedding ceremony consisted of their exchanging of their Mao buttons. And just again, mentioning the fact that they gave us so much, practically the only sort of little trinket that they had were their Mao buttons. So all of them had lots of Mao buttons, and they gave them to us just because we were interested. This piece is called Legal Aliens. This is continuing my parents' story, coming to the United States and trying to rent a house. And even though they had come here legally, they were still considered aliens. My dad was discriminated against even after he got his job at the Purdue University. He wasn't allowed to rent in certain or buy in certain neighborhoods. So I think of that a lot in terms of legality, but also prejudice. This is another recent piece. It's just an homage to my mother and her 7 sisters. It's just called Seven Aunties. And the fun thing about this for me was making little teeny people in sort of a classical style using China paint. And then making the tassels. That was fun. And then leading to my mother in particular, so my mother came through with the ladies in Bombay and came to the United States. And she and my dad raised us very Americanized, but she always kept up her practice of Chinese painting. So she was somewhat of a calligrapher, as a lot of Chinese people are. It's one of their art forms that you can do right in their own house. And she made us do calligraphy when we were little, in the summer sessions when we weren't in school, we would do calligraphy every morning. And so as she grew older, she spent a bunch of time in Montana with me at an assisted living, but I would bring her back to my house and we would work in the studio together. And she would do traditional Chinese painting. This is one of her paintings, a lot of which involves copying masters. But we discovered that we could do collaborative work. And this was something really fun for her. So she would outlast me in the studio. She would want to work way longer than I was ready to quit. And she would paint bamboo or landscapes or plum blossom on my pots. And we had a number of shows together. She showed her classic Chinese painting, and then we showed our collaborations. This piece went to Taiwan in a show, and my mom said, "Oh, I'm like Grandma Moses." She was very proud of having somewhat any kind of recognition. She was a wonderful person and very, very sort of easygoing. Everything would be fine with her. She could do nothing, or she could be really active. She was adventurous, very open, non-judgmental, wonderful person. As my mom aged and grew older and I grew older, some of my focus moved a little bit from thinking specifically about my life as a child, but also what I'm going to pass on, what my mom passed on to me in terms of values and culture, and what I could pass on to my son and to the rest of the world even. And one of the sources of imagery for this was the funerary papers. And so this is a collection of Chinese funerary papers that traditionally are burned when someone dies. And a lot of the imagery has to do with things that you want to pass on, like the clothing on the top. You want to make sure that the people who have died have clothing to wear. Some of the things have cars and watches and gold and money, and there's lots of different things that consist of funerary paper. And they're beautiful, and they're printmaking, and there's some artist's hands develop these. And so I collected them for quite a while and tried to use them in my work. Another influence for this next series is the kind of vase that was pretty prominent in Ming and Qing dynasty, where people who wanted to show their wealth would create drawings, or in the case on the left, three-dimensional or bas-relief images of their wealth, their vases, their furniture, floral designs, just to show the abundance and the wealth of the owner of the vase, who would probably commission these vases. And one of the things I love about this, and that piece on the left I found at the museum in Baltimore. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's a very odd little museum. But what I like about it is the idea that you can make pattern out of things that are not the same. So I am a very lazy artist, and when you try to, there are some artists that can do pattern so well, and I just get tired of doing the same thing, but I like the feel of pattern. So I call this next series Inheritance Pieces, because they show that sort of patterned wealth, but also have a little bit of imagery from the funerary papers. So to me, they capture some of that Chinese composition, but also, if you look deeper, you will see a little bit of reference to passing on or death. So similar kinds of imagery on figures and on vases. Again, here's the twinning, the two pairs of things that are kind of similar. And the children are there as the inheritors. Another set. So this is sort of ongoing series. I make these vases continually. This one is a little bit of an unusual one. This one is after my mom passed away, every February I would make a piece in her honor. So this, I call these red ones, these I call them medicine jars, because I felt like my mom always could soothe us. She could heal all of us. My sister, my husband, my cousins, all the people in my family. My mother had this wonderful way of being able to heal problems. So I call these medicine jars. And they have my own renditions of her paintings on them. This is another kind of recent manifestation where I'm using those little sort of figurines that hark back to an earlier time, classical Chinese figurines on a large vase. And I like the way these small figures can sort of control the mass of the large vase. Compositionally, they speak louder than the actual volume of the vase themselves. And then they have a wonderful little storytelling quality. There's another version. And the text is mother, father, uncle, aunt, grandson, all the words for the relatives. Another pair. So you saw the photo of the people who were before dinner. So this is what my family in China looked like after dinner. And what I loved is the comfort between the older generation and the younger generation. So this next series, and I realize I'm going kind of slow, so I'll try to hurry up. This next series is about food. So I have back to making pottery again. I do make a lot of food, a lot of pots that refer specifically to types of food that you're eating, or else the paper plate. So the chai knot is it's like a porcelain version of a paper plate, which tried to pretend that it was China. So chai net. So this is my chai knot. And then those are ramen bowls on the bottom. This is a ginger jar. These are spoons and bowls, and written on the bowl are all the different names of the typical Chinese soups that you can get at restaurants. Egg drop soup, wonton soup, hot and sour soup, shark's fin soup. And then on the spoons, it says, let's eat, or let's have some soup. Soybeans are a super important type of food in my family, and food in general is like, it's like one of the most important cultural markings of a culture. So if you talk to somebody from India, they're going to talk about their cuisine and the food that they ate as a child. So soybeans are made into so many different products, from tofu to eating edamame. And my sister and I decided to collaborate and write this book, Auntie Young's Great Soybean Picnic, which is about a true story of my parents' immigration to the United States and the community that they found in the United States through food. And this is an image from that. And again, these are, I didn't know how to erase on paper, but I know how to erase on clay. So I would do my drawings on clay with underglaze and photograph them for the book. Another little angle on food is there's a lot of food names that are interesting in terms of the cultural crossover and the loan words that are involved. So like a word like cheese, they don't really have cheese in China. So the word for cheese in Chinese is qise, which I think is, to me, it's funny. Or the word for hamburger is hanbaobao. Or the word for Coke is Coca-Cola. Shala for salad. So if you wanted to learn Chinese, these are all called Learn Chinese plates. One of the easiest ways you can learn is to learn the words for words you already know. Chakali, taka, kunda ji for Mr. Colonel Sanders. I did make a set of these into flashcards. I call this Chinese language flashcard snack tray set. This is just a photo of a kid who actually ordered a plate from me. And I love that he's so happy just to have received this plate. This is just off the internet. So his dad said this kid wanted this. He's a happy kid. Another version of food inquiry are these takeout boxes. So I made my own models and made slip caps versions of a Chinese takeout box and an American styrofoam hamburger box, and juxtaposed the Chinese person eating Chinese food out of the hamburger box and the girl eating a hamburger from the Chinese takeout box. And then just sort of trying to capture the sensation of being all mixed up in terms of my own identity. A couple of versions of these. This one about my parents and their immigration to the United States. This is marking my parents' trip from China, from Shanghai to Indiana. And this is a piece, this was the first piece that I made after my mom died to commemorate her death. She died at 99 years. So this is just called 99 years. And it has her paintings, my version of her paintings on the takeout boxes, as she was a nurturer, a provider. And there were 9 boxes for her 99 years. And the coloration is red, white, and blue to show that she adopted America as her country. Going on with food, just really quick, I'm gonna try to get through these a little faster, but I love road trips, and I'm really interested in where we get to eat on a road trip. So as we travel Western Montana and the Western United States, I started noticing these Chinese restaurants in these little tiny towns. A lot of these towns would have Chinese restaurants, and a lot of it is because of the history of Chinese workers coming to the United States to work the railroads, the mines. and other, low paying jobs. If it was more than they could earn in China, it was enough money for them to go back to China several times with money for their relatives. There's a whole lot of history about the Chinese Exclusion Act and some of the prejudice that they encountered, but I've done several road trips where I stopped at little Chinese restaurants along the way. That last one and this one is the commemoration of that. The Pekin in Butte, Montana, which is the oldest, longest, continually running Chinese restaurant in the United States. The food is terrible, but the history is great. This is the interior. This is a picture of the interior with a cowboy and a guy wearing a University of Montana sweatshirt. Butte, Montana. The Yat-Sun in East Helena. The Montana Cafe in Hamilton, Polson, and then on the lower right, the Panda Express, where it says Anywhere USA. This one I love, Big Chief Chinese. It's on the reservation in Montana. But these workers who came to the United States, at one point, Butte and Helena were 20% Chinese in their population. They had some pretty rough times, and they were not, some of the legal issues that they had to go through. So after a while, they were banned from the mines, and they had to resort to Chinese restaurants or laundries or opium dens or prostitution to make their living. There was a little while when they were not allowed to bring their spouses to the United States. So there were a lot of single men around. This is a takeout joint, or an order in Great Falls, Montana. And this is my auntie, yeah, this is my aunt and uncle's Chinese restaurant in the Midwest. And I just have a quick story to tell about this. So I decided to make one for my own family for the Dragon Inn, which was the first Mandarin style restaurant in the Chicago area. And I put it in the kiln, and there was a power shortage during the firing. When I opened the kiln, there was a huge crack down the middle, right between my aunt and my uncle. And strangely enough, my aunt and uncle almost divorced over this restaurant. So this seemed like some kind of a symbolism. And they did patch it up. And so I patched it up with a fake kintsugi Japanese style repair job with the gold leaf. So that's my mom on the far left, my dad on the far right, and my aunt and uncle in the middle, and their cousin who came from China to be the cook. Again, thinking a little bit about the lives of the immigrants has led me to do some work that has maybe a little bit more political commentary in terms of immigration. I talked about that one piece early on about immigration, but also about stereotypes. So the text on this says model minority. So this little plate shows sort of the 3 acceptable careers for Chinese Americans: nerdy computer scientist, cook, or super skilled Tiger Mom trained musician. Similarly, it says model minority in on the left, and we have a Stanford grad and a Harvard grad, and on the right side, the bad stereotypes, the Fu Manchu communist or the peasant, and it says not me. This piece is specifically about immigration, where you have the American waving the flag, do not enter, but you have some refugees perhaps exclaiming that America is many colors, not just white. So one of the things that I have thought about in terms, one of the, I do read a lot of fiction, and in one of the quotes I found that, oh no, I'm sorry, this was actually nonfiction. But anyway, the quote was that there are three stages of life, love, career, and service. And as I get older, I start to think more and more about how can I use my skills as service. And I do feel like just addressing the subject of multiculturalism is a certain amount of service. But I also maybe want to see if I can dig a little bit deeper. So again, these are not in exact chronological order, but some of the pieces that I feel like address a larger social scheme. So going from dealing with my own child, how to raise good children, what is that ramification in a larger world, to just talking about language and language imperialism and understanding foreign cultures and being exposed to foreign cultures, to making more direct commentary about immigration and some other issues in a larger, I hate to say political because I don't want to seem too bombastic, but at least a social sphere. So this piece is called Ta, and that character Ta is a gender neutral character. It means he, she, or it. So I have this person who could be either gender, male or female, sitting as a split personality on this rock with the character. It means, the word means he, she, or it. Oh, sorry, that's that same one. Went wrong way. I started thinking about fundraisers. So during COVID, I made a whole bunch of these COVID protocol pieces and sold them with the proceeds going to the Montana Nurses Association. There's a closer one also with the idea that you, as an American, this is what you should do to be patriotic, is follow COVID protocols. And then beyond fundraising, these three pieces are about voter registration or voting, getting your vote in. And I started making pieces that would only be sold to someone for, they would be half price if the person would register three people to vote. So trying to think of ways that are more than just preaching to the choir or just illustrating a situation, how to involve action as well as education. This next series were my environmental pieces. So these are pieces that you could buy. But then if you bought this piece, you had to read this piece of paper that was supplied with it that had a list of 10 ecologically, environmentally friendly nonprofits that your proceeds, I would pay whatever you paid me, I would donate that to one of these causes. But you had to read about them and pick which cause. And I tried to pick really obscure ones like the Sustainable Phosphorus Association or PANA or the Alternative Incinerator Project. Anyway, you finally figure out which plastic you can recycle. A new bike will help you get to work. You will soon begin recycling. So as soon as you bought this, you got a green fortune cookie with the fortune you are helping to protect the environment. And the proceeds of that would go to the environmental cause of your choice. Then more recently, back just to fundraising, I'm very concerned about the political situation. And so these pieces are just called American Heroes. The proceeds from these go to the ACLU. Dogs Against Doge. This is just called the ACLU. This is called Only You for our national parks. And there's the American hero is a Costco shopper, a person who reads and keeps up to date. The Harvard administrators that wouldn't buckle, scientists, and then they sit on these little red, white, and blue holders. And then again, another piece that involved red, white, and blue fortunes that if the person bought this piece, the proceeds would go to the ACLU. Then, just to wind up, I also wanted to mention that since I've been around for a long time, I've also played music. This is from 1982. This is our band, the Big Sky Mudflaps, and we played on the NBC Today show. And I bet some of you young people don't even know what that was, but that was a pretty important breakthrough. It was national TV, and we were fortunate to get an appearance on that Today show along with the Cool Jazz Festival in New York City. And so this is what we looked like then, and this is what we look like now. Not really, but we're still playing. I still play weekly with the jazz trio, and this band, the Big Sky Mudflap, still exists. I have a Brazilian band. I play in a lot of different kinds of music and keep it alive, and it's a wonderful outlet after sort of solitary work in the studio.
Thank you,
Did I
Beth.
do that right?
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry that went on kind of long.
Oh, I loved it. I have a question. So did you mention any teachers, any people that influence you, other artists besides your mother, obviously? Did you have anybody specifically that you felt indebted to that inspired you to stick with it? And
well, Rudy Audio, and I took out the slide of him just because I was trying to keep my slideshow a little bit shorter, but I usually have just a portrait of him. As a teacher, he was really amazing, mostly because he was mostly supportive, but mostly I mean, he would still say, I don't know what you're doing here, but it wasn't an actual critique. It was just like, I don't know what this is, but I like this. And he would always say what he liked. And that would give you a sense of direction. And he was so connected with the art world that he always managed to maintain this quality of authority, even though it was in a very, very gentle way. He also gave me the permission to do figurative work, and then a very quick copy. People always ask me why I have a little pink on the cheeks, and that is actually stolen directly from Rudy's figures. He usually only had one, and I only usually have one pink spot on the cheek. And that's just an homage to him. But I feel like what it does is it separates the face from the background because I'm just doing a line drawing over the background. But yeah, Rudy is probably my main inspiration. And there's lots of people, including the people that I taught with, Tom Rippon, Eddie Dominguez, who I taught with for only a year, and Julia Galloway and Trey Hill, who are both still at the University of Montana. Oh, and I don't know, lots of people, Viola Fry. It's a really good artist, I think. Jennifer Ling Datchuk. She's beyond ceramics now, but I like her. I like her using her personal life. And Stephanie Shih, I think she's amazing. I like her work a lot. And she does this fundraising on a large, large scale. Ayumi, she knows how to do fundraising on a large scale. My fundraising is dinky.
so if somebody wanted to acquire your work, other than looking at our website and looking at the picnic exhibition, shameless plug here, but what galleries represent you, or how would they acquire your work if they were interested, including the fundraiser pieces? How would someone, do you have something on your website that we could look at, or?
I really try not to sell directly from my website because it
That's
just gets me off the computer. But I sell, my main galleries are Lucy Lacoste in Concord, Massachusetts, Radius Gallery here in Missoula, Montana, Natsulis Gallery in Davis, Sherry Leedy in Kansas City, and I'm going to have a couple of little pop-up shows in St. Louis with Dwayne Reed this year. I've shown with him before, but I'm going to do a pop-up show with him in the next year. And then Schaller online, I have work that will be at Schaller on November 19th, I think. And I work with ACAR sometimes.
Okay. Right. Great. Thank you. Are there other questions, Bill?
Yeah, we have a few questions that came in the chat. One is, I love the little Lulu reference, one of my favorite comics too. And how you showed this figures with cartoon voice balloons. I know you said that your parents emphasized English in your household. Do you speak and write fluent Chinese?
No, I don't. I have baby talk level Chinese. I know I can sometimes order from the restaurant, but not always. I have, the more common foods I can order. Um, but mostly I use the words that I learned when I was doing, calligraphy in grade school, like mother, father, um, wash the dishes, clean your house, clean your room, go to school, sing songs, words from like the basic Chinese primers that when we had our Chinese lessons. And then I use the internet.
And the piece,
Math.
I have a question. You showed a piece that I think was a collaboration with your mother,
Mhm.
and it had some little landscape scenes, but up around the neck of the vase, there was a lot of calligraphy. And I wondered who did that calligraphy. Was that
That
you
was
or your mother?
that's that's my calligraphy. And some people say my calligraphy is pretty good, but when I show it to my relatives in China, they really think it's like first grade.
Oh, well, I
But
can read it. I can read it, so it's clear.
oh, awesome. Well, it's just like penmanship in the United States. It's not emphasized anymore. So the younger generation doesn't have great calligraphy, I would say. But my parents' generation, it was very, very important to have good calligraphy. Just like, I mean, people don't even do cursive anymore in schools, I don't think.
Right.
So I think it's a skill that's being lost.
Huh. Well,
So
that's
another question, what inspired you to become an artist?
I think Um, there's a couple of lucky things. I didn't have a tiger mom. I had a understanding, open, liberal thinking mother who let me play when I was a kid, do art. Well, here's something, and you guys may feel this too. All you artists, like when you were a kid, you went, "Oh, I'm pretty good at this." And I looked at my sister's drawings later, my sister's and mine side by side. Her drawings were much neater, much more accurate. Mine were wild and weird, but I always thought I was the better artist. And then I also had one experience, which I hope a lot of you have had, where I said to at some point, probably middle schoolish, I thought to myself, I think I have something to say. And I think it was a recognition of being a little bit different and an urge to communicate or an urge to put something down. And I think I know when I talk to people about my children's book, I feel like everybody has a children's book in them. And I feel it's some of that same urge, that sense of having something to express. And I do feel like probably everybody has a children's book in them. It's just a matter of whether they want to write it or illustrate it or tell it to someone. Because the child part of our life is so formative and so magical.
So another question in the chat, love the Chinese restaurant series. Have you done one for the Orange Garden in Chicago? It's the oldest Chinese restaurant in Chicago, been open since 1932.
Oh, no, I have not, but the Pekin was opened in 1911. So it's got that one beat. And I only did Chinese restaurants of the West. And when I had my show of the restaurants, I put them in east-west order on the wall so that you just had the sense of traveling through.
So I'm going to stick my neck out and suggest that maybe you have an invitation to go to Chicago.
Well, my cousins live in Chicago, and I have quite a few recommendations of Chinese restaurants, and that the Chinese restaurant that I showed the plate of that split in half, that is in Orland Park, which is outside of Chicago. So, and they had 3 restaurants. They had Dragon Inn, Dragon Seed, and Mandarin restaurant in the Chicago area. So I will try, what's it called? The Orange?
The Orange Garden, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I-
Orange Garden.
I'll check it out next time I'm in Chicago. At least drive by it and take a picture.
And the person who asked that question or made that comment says, yes, come to Chicago.
Okay, I will.
Give you his contact information. He's
Yeah.
an listen to us. Thanks, Scott.
Oh, it's someone you know. Okay, then I
Probably
try.
have to wrap this up pretty soon, everybody. So any more last minute questions here?
So yeah, there are several comments. Fantastic work. Thanks so much for the presentation. Thanks for being so generous and sharing. And then I think I'll end with the best one. Beth, I never stop loving the work you make. And then a little smiley face.
Thank you. And thanks for organizing this, Margaret and Bill. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Stephanie, and whoever else I can't see that's here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.